Well, this week in the news, voters in Arkport, Alfred Ellman, and Kennesaw voted against the idea of a three-way merger. The attorney for Hornell Police, a former Hornell police officer, Jen Speed, he's a Rochester attorney, James Riotto Jr. Riotto issued a statement saying that all police officers in Hornell, past and present, presumably that means the ones who knew Jen Speed at work, they're being subpoenaed. Jen Speed's trial is coming up a week from this Monday. Her trial starts September 21st. Brooks Baker, the Steuben County District Attorney, will be doing the prosecuting. Hornellsville's planning board, they say they're working on the possibility of getting more housing in Hornellsville in case the Alstom Steel deal with Amtrak gets signed. Now on to talk local, state, and national is Hornell Republican leader, Alderman, and Deputy Mayor John Buckley. John, thanks for calling in.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Brian.
Well, John, wanted to start out with the national news, and you'd be the obvious one to ask about this. The jokes about Donald Trump from both the media, talking heads, and other candidates. You know, it's not just the candidates, it's the shills for the other candidates. There's media pundits who are not only defending Carly Fiorina and Ben Carson, which is fine, to defend them from Trump's criticisms, but they're telling us why we should not trust or like or have any positive thoughts about the Trump campaign. What are your thoughts on that sort of media manipulation?
Well, there's always media manipulation, depending on the news outlet. Most of them have an agenda. They're trying to sway you one way or the other. So there's nothing really new there. There's nothing surprising there. There's a lot of, there's a groundswell of support for Donald Trump, like I haven't seen in a long, long time. On the other side of that, there's a lot of anti-Trump folks out there that just don't like him. So we haven't really seen someone like a Donald Trump before. I have to harken back to, maybe, Ronald Reagan, how he just had so many people, get on board with him. But, I'll remind people that when Ronald Reagan first ran for president back in 76, he was the outsider. He was considered the non-establishment outside Washington type candidate, and look how that turned out. It turned out great for not only Reagan, the Republican Party, and the country as a whole. So, I'm not comparing Donald Trump to Reagan. I think there are some similarities. There's a lot of differences as well. You have two people that were Democrats at one time. Ronald Reagan was a Democrat. Went on to lead the Democratic Party, or as he so eloquently stated, he didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left him. And Donald Trump, kind of, there's some parallels. There's some definite parallels there. So it's definitely interesting. A lot of anti-Trump folks, but he's still leading in the polls.
Here's the list of A-listers who are going to be in the CNN debate that was announced on Friday. Donald Trump, Ben Carson, Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz, Scott Walker, Marco Rubio, Mike Huckabee, Rand Paul, John Kasich, and Chris Christie. Now that will be a CNN debate on September 16th. CNN says before that big debate, there will be another debate with the other candidates, Rick Perry, Rick Santorum, Bobby Jindal, George Pataki, and Lindsey Graham. Your thoughts on the two debates?
Well, the second debate, or the first debate, I should say, with the, I don't know if you want to call it the JV team, as some people refer to it. I wonder why some of them are still hanging around. Lindsey Graham, George Pataki, these are candidates that have no chance whatsoever. Their poll numbers are coming in at 0. I've even seen negative poll numbers. I'm not even sure how that's possible. But there's a lot of candidates out there. Bobby Jindal, the governor from Louisiana, who I think is an outstanding governor. Rick Perry, former governor of Texas, who did a phenomenal job while he was in control of Texas. Just some really good people there, but they're just not going anywhere in the polls. Their money and resources are very limited. Governor Perry, who I've really grown to like over the years, he's just out of money. He doesn't have the funds. And there's only a finite amount of money out there from donors. And as we go down this road, and their poll numbers are just stuck in the mud, whether it's at 2%, 3%, or lower, honestly, the people that donate the money and fund these candidates, they're going to start looking at them and cut off the spigot very soon. So you're really talking about, who are the heavy hitters? Who are the ones that are going to, come down the stretch? Obviously, Jeb Bush is very well positioned financially. He's not my favorite candidate by any stretch of the imagination. You have the Rubios and the Rand Pauls. I think they're kind of middle of the pack. John Kasich, you keep an eye on him. As Jeb Bush starts to falter and this anti-establishment wave, just kind of he gets caught up in, keep your eye on John Kasich, because I think a lot of the establishment types will leave Jeb Bush and turn to Kasich if Bush can't start gaining ground in some of these critical states and that are having early primaries. So keep an eye on that. Obviously, Donald Trump is self-funding, doesn't have to worry about money. Honestly, he's not really spending a lot of money. He's getting all the free airtime anyone could ever hope for. So he's in very well position. So I think coming down the stretch, Trump has to look out for Jeb Bush, obviously. Fiorina and Carson, two interesting outside candidates. I'm not sure how they're going to be positioned financially down the road. Right now they're doing very well in the polls, which will attract donors. But, we still have a long way to go. It's very interesting to say the least, so stay tuned.
Talking with Hornell Republican leader John Buckley. John, Hillary's emails.
Yes, well, that's a story that just doesn't go away. I remember, I don't know, some months ago, maybe it was in the spring when the story was, first starting to break. I was on your show and with Mayor Hogan at the time, and you had mentioned it. And the story really hadn't really taken off. It was, people were just starting to talk about it. And I remember thinking, well, it's one of those, issues that makes for great election fodder. But at the time, who really understood how troublesome it would be for her, and to have these classified emails on her own private server is just beyond belief. Someone in that position who was a United States senator in New York, who ran the State Department for that period of time, you would think they just know better. But Hillary just thinks she's above the law. Just thinks she's can basically get away with whatever she wants to do and just shrug it off. I don't think she can this time. The FBI, to my surprise, is vigorously investigating that, so we'll see where that goes. But I think this thing has legs. It's not going away, and it could be her undoing.
You think Biden will be the candidate?
Well, let me put it this way. Joe Biden wouldn't be in the conversation if the Democrats thought Hillary was in the clear. If they thought Hillary had a free ride or a clear path to the nomination, the names Joe Biden, a couple of Al Gore's name has been resurfaced over the last couple of weeks. Some of these people are just bringing them out of the mothballs. So that shows a desperation on the Democratic Party side. They really don't have a deep bench. I mean, you talked about the Republican bench right out, right at the top of the show. You named off all the Republican stalwarts that are in the race, and it's a who's list. On the Democratic side, you really don't have that. You have Hillary, who is a big name nationally, but after that, you have Joe Biden, who's a sitting VP and has been in the Senate for a long time. But other than that, you really don't have anyone. So they're desperate, and they know they're in trouble.
The Iranian deal, your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a terrible deal. I mean, it's absolutely terrible. And, Chuck Schumer, to his credit, got it right. So I'm going to give Chuck Schumer partial credit on the Iranian deal for voting no. And the reason I'm only giving him partial credit is because he had the courage to vote no, but he didn't have the courage or conviction to actually lobby his fellow Democratic senators to vote no. So he voted no, so he's in the clear, but he didn't really, go to the wall, go to the mat with the others in his party. So he gets partial credit.
Talking with Hornell Republican leader John Buckley. John, in Albany this week, Governor Andrew Cuomo pushed once again publicly for a $15 an hour minimum wage raise. Your thoughts on that?
Well, if you're a high school kid flipping burgers at McDonald's, that's the best news in the world. I mean, who wouldn't want $15 an hour straight out of while you're in high school, working part-time job at Burger King, McDonald's, and Subway, or whatever restaurants this affects. For the rest of us, for the people that live in the real world, it's catastrophic, because what you're going to see is what you've seen in some of the other cities around the country that have tried this, namely Seattle, San Francisco. You're going to see businesses going to automation. You're going to see businesses not hiring people. You're going to see businesses laying off people. So basically, the government is hurting business. You'll see businesses contracting. So, it all sounds well and good. Oh, we should all have a living wage and this and that. But the truth of the matter is, these jobs were never meant to be just lifetime jobs. They were meant to be entry-level jobs when you're in high school, or when you're just out of high school, or when you're trying to supplement your income during college. So, that's what these jobs are for. So, let's not confuse these jobs with factory jobs or engineering jobs, or jobs in the police department or fire department. And by the way, teachers around here don't make a heck of a lot more than that when they're first starting out. So just to give you a little idea of what we're talking about here, it's quite ridiculous. Hopefully, the adults in the room in cooler heads will prevail.
On the topic of teachers, Liz Benjamin from Capital Tonight reports that the State Board of Regents, they're scheduled to meet next week to, among other things, Benjamin says, vote on the emergency regulations establishing the new evaluation system, which is largely, though not entirely, based on the results of Common Core tests from 20% of students, which 20% of students opted out of this year. And NYSUT was not against that, actually. NYSUT has set up an email and fax campaign so that their teacher union members can tell the Board of Regents between now and next week to do everything in your power to stop the over-testing and evaluating educators based on the Common Core testing. John Buckley, your thoughts?
Well, the over-testing is exactly right. I mean, they test these kids so much. And what happens is the teachers have to teach to the test instead of just teaching them what they should be teaching. It takes the local control out of the local school districts. It's just terrible. Common Core has been a failure from the get-go. The teacher evaluations are unfair. Don't get me wrong. I think teachers, just like anyone else, should be evaluated. But the question is, how do you evaluate them? You have kids in a Hornell, New York, or a Bath, New York, that honestly, a lot of these kids just don't have a chance, Brian. They come from single-family homes. They don't have a mom and dad that's helping them out with their homework. And education is a two-way street. I mean, you can't just rely on the teacher and the school district to educate your child. The parents have to do that. They have to do their end at home, whether it's helping their child with their homework or encouraging their child to read at home. You can't strictly rely on teachers to do it. And too many parents, and this is where society has really gone downhill with the demise of the family unit. Too many parents use the school as a daycare. They drop their kid off, go do what they want to do all day. Because a lot of these, let's be honest, a lot of these folks don't work. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great parents out there. I talk to them every day. There are. But there's that segment that, well, honestly, they're just coming up short. And who gets hurt in the end? It's the child. And then the politicians in Albany come up with these ideas. Well, we have to have these teachers evaluated on students' performance. Well, I'm sorry, but if you have parents that aren't doing the right thing for their child, those kids aren't going to succeed in class, and they're going to poorly reflect on the teacher. So that's not fair to the teacher. So we need to do away with the current evaluations and come up with something that's more fair.
I'm Brian O'Neill. My guest is John Buckley. You're listening to AM 1480 WLEA. The show is Top Story. Local questions for Hornell GOP leader John Buckley coming up next. Stay with us. Back on Top Story, I'm Brian O'Neill. On with Hornell GOP leader, Deputy Mayor John Buckley, also the 9th Ward Alderman, wears a lot of hats. Now focusing on the local issues. Let's start out with St. James.
The town hall a couple weeks ago, Brian, I attended that. It was very well attended by the public. It sounds like and it looks like St. James has turned the corner. They're doing a lot better. Surgery at first was limited. They only had a certain days a week and certain hours on those days. Now surgery's been restored. They have a full-time anesthesiologist back on board. All the services that they had 2 years ago are still available now, except for maternity, which I'm still advocating for. So, talking to some of the doctors, they're going in the right direction. We're not quite there yet. Got a ways to go, but we're making slow and steady progress.
How about Alstom? Are you hearing anything? I heard. I kept asking, when do I call you to find out if that contract's been signed? And I was given a date. Haven't heard yet. What do you think, John Buckley?
It's coming. I've heard the same things. There's been dates, and then it's got pushed back, and then another date, and for one reason or another, it's been delayed. But I have great feelings. I think Alstom has great things ahead of it. They've already been hiring new people, and if they land this contract, I expect them to, if not double their workforce, come pretty darn close to that. So, that's good news for the workers in the valley, in the community, and good news across the board.
How about the merger vote? That was voted down by all three schools on Thursday night. Your thoughts there, John?
Wow. That was a pretty resounding no, especially on the part of Alfred Allman. You look at the numbers, and it was just overwhelming. Not even close. Cantarega was, fairly close. Arkport, not that close, but, Alfred Allman, they came out in droves against it. So, that tells you a lot. And another thing that, really strikes me is the three school boards, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, I think all three school boards unanimously voted for it. I think there might have been one abstention somewhere along the line, maybe in Arkport. But all three school boards voted for it and advocated for it, but the voters obviously felt different.
How about the Thursday night primary? Kind of interesting that the primary was on the same day as the merger vote, the straw poll vote on the merger.
Yeah, there was talk on, what day to have that on, going back, the last year. Why they settled on Thursday, I'm not entirely sure, but there was not anything to vote on in Hornell, but some of the surrounding municipalities. I know there was a county legislator that got defeated in a primary over in Bath. We had the three-way race in North Hornell for the town justice, which former school board member and former Hornell police officer Rich Scavo won. Congratulations goes out to Rich. Really three good candidates in North Hornell. It's too bad they didn't have three positions, because I think all three of them would have done a fine job. But like I said, not a whole lot going on locally except for North Hornell and some of the smaller towns and villages around.
Okay, we've been talking with Hornell Republican leader John Buckley. John, we got a couple minutes left. Was there anything I did not bring up you'd like to talk about?
Oh, geez, Brian, I don't know. I could probably go on all day. It just depends what you want to talk about. The national stuff is exciting, but we'll have to just kind of play that by ear, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of great discussions going forward as the candidates start to dwindle and drop out. And the thing that's interesting to me is when all these candidates, the ones that are carrying the 2 and the 3%, when they start to drop out, where does that 2 and 3% go? Does it start going to the establishment type, like a Jeb Bush, or does it go to the non-establishment types like the Fiorinas and Donald Trump? So, that's kind of what I'm keeping my eye on.
If you listen to Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity, it's kind of an interesting thing. I have a friend who is, I guess you'd describe him as a paleo-conservative. That's kind of like the Pat Buchanan view. And my friend's view is that Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity are shills for the establishment Republicans. But if, true, they were very much behind George W. and maybe a little bit too much as far as objectivity goes. But if you count all the candidates that they've trashed ever since then, including Jeb Bush, and I'm thinking Mitt Romney, John McCain, if you look at the way that Hannity and Limbaugh have been treating the establishment Republicans in recent years and the way they've been behind the more Tea Party, more conservative ones, and the way they treat Trump, if you listen to the way Hannity and Limbaugh talk about Trump, it's a completely different thing than the way that those two talked about, George W. Bush. Now, George W. Bush, great president, no doubt about it, but there were some people who were annoyed that Rush and Sean were almost cheerleaders for them. In their words, not mine. What do you think of this new phenomenon of Hannity and Limbaugh actually backing one of the GOP leading candidates?
Well, I think you're correct in the assertion that in the past, Hannity and Limbaugh have been cheerleaders for the establishment Republicans, but I think Hannity and Limbaugh, kind of like just the regular rank and file Republicans out there who are sick and tired of the same old, and spinning their wheels in the mud. I think they recognize that, hey, you know what? The establishment just isn't working. The establishment has sold us under the bus. The Republican establishment said, "Give us back the House of Representatives, and we'll go after Obamacare, and we'll do this and we'll do that." And what happens? Nothing. They kowtow to them. They basically, John Boehner gets run over. So the establishment Republicans say, "Well, give us back the Senate. Then we'll have the Senate and the House. Then we can really go after him." And what happens? Mitch McConnell gets back in control. More of the same. So I think Limbaugh and Hannity, are really onto something, and they're tapping into the same thing a lot of other people are tapping into, which is the establishment has failed us time and time again. It's time for something new.
Hornell Republican leader John Buckley, always great having you on.
Brian, thanks a lot. You have a great Saturday afternoon.